I thought I'd surprise you a little bit. And I see that my students have got serious problems with, especially maybe it's because of the times that we're in, but here in South Africa, there's a lot of what I call irrational fears and worries that people have got. And the moment that you've got these worries, you cannot and you will not operate to the best of your ability. And our job is to become the best that we can be. So for that reason, I thought, let me, maybe I can help you, but share with you the processes that I'm using in order to handle worries and fears. One of the things that I can advise you to begin with is be careful for the news media, even for Facebook, the feeds. I see there's a lot of negativity going on Facebook, and it's more negative than positive, definitely. But the news media, the newspapers, I'm not sure why anyone should still read the newspapers, but TV and all of that, I think is driving this irrational fear that we've got and the worries that we've got. So our job is to protect ourselves. So as a wealth creator, it's to grow and to protect. And sometimes it's easier to grow than to protect, because when we protect, it's not only the physical assets that we've got, but the greatest thing that we need to protect will be our mindsets, the way that we think, our belief systems, and so forth. Right. Now, we are sitting with a small problem, if I can call it a problem, because our minds will fall back on what I call the meta programs that we are running. In other words, there's a program that is programmed in our subconscious mind, and most of the time not by us, by either the media or our parents or before we were 7 years of age. And because of that, the moment that something happens, the moment that there's an input, that we see something, hear something, feel, taste, or smell something, it triggers that meta program that runs on the subconscious mind without us, most of the time, even knowing that we are busy running it. So unconsciously, we have been trained and conditioned our whole life to, I can almost say, to think in certain ways, to think in certain patterns. Now, if we want to be successful, we first need to adopt a successful attitude. And then we have to protect that attitude. In other words, this new identity that we've got. And make sure that the way that we think aligns with the success that we want to be. Okay, now, this is really important because to me, the way that I see it is that these fears and worries, they literally, I can almost say, they eat up all our mental energies, because the mental energy, we've got X amount of mental energy, let's call it per day. And once that is depleted, then you open yourself up to lots of problems, lots of worries, lots of things that will never happen, and fears. Okay? So most of our mental energy is devoted to these little programs that we are running, these meta programs, in terms of worries and fears, or I call it irrational fears and irrational worries, right? So without us knowing it, much and most of the way that we think, conscious or subconscious, we do that, and our makeup is to such a way that we're going to try to avoid that which we fear. Now, here's the problem. If this program runs in the background and we're not aware of it, it simply means that it eats up this mental reserve that we've got. In other words, if that thing is going to happen, then we must be prepared for it, even if it's irrational. Now, if you've got 10 or 20 or 50 or 100 of these little programs that are always open, can you imagine how much of the energy is gone? It's not available for us, and I'm talking about mental energy, right? So the problem is that most of these little programs that we are running, we're not aware of it. And because of that, we're in a state of fear the whole time and of worrying the whole time. So the moment that we listen to the news, this is a reinforcement, and it basically triggers this whole process. So we really have serious problems, and we do not know that this is causing the problem. So this is literally, let's call it the fear loop, right? And our brain is, because our brain is there to protect ourselves, and well, there's a reticular activated system that allows the inputs to come in, and that then links up with the meta programs that we are running, is constantly on the lookout for what is going to hurt us, harm us, or even cause us to die. So our brain is constantly on the lookout for things like, what if other people think something about bad stuff about us, or what if they don't like us, or what if I lose a lot of money, or what if the economy is tanking, or what if the interest rate goes up, or what if my wife leaves me, or what if my children start using drugs, or what if... I hope that you see what's going to happen. Our brains are basically like computers, and these open loop worries and fears that we are running constantly, it's going to hurt us. And by doing that, it literally, if we can say our brains is like a computer, it's like we open all these little programs, open loop programs, and then the whole process slows down because of all these open programs that is running in the background, but we're not aware of it because at that point we're focusing on a specific program. And because of that, it becomes extremely difficult for us to focus on doing those stuff and things that we need to do in order to become successful, and to focus on the positive outcome because we are running all these negativity basically in the background. So what is this process that, the process that I'm following in order to be able to do this? We need to formulate, or I thought I need to formulate a process where I can handle these fears and worries. And the easiest way to do it is simply to say, okay, make a list of all the things that you worry. So write it down. And the chances are, just by writing them down, you're going to find that nothing is going to happen, because you'll immediately see that they're completely irrational or irrelevant. Okay, so let's make a list of worries. What if the economy, what if the rand tanks? Or what if we going to get into junk status? We're already in junk status, but even worse. What is going to happen if they nationalize all the properties? What is going to happen if the economy, the world economy, tanks? What is going to happen, say for example, if the taxes goes up? What if someone says a lot of bad stuff about me or about my business? These are things that is eating up this RAM memory that we've got. But just by writing them down, now we can follow a process. And the process that we follow is, we're going to prioritize and say, okay, I've got 20 or 30 worries that I've got. I'm going to write them down, and then the first question that I'm going to ask myself is, but is this possible, and can this really happen? Or is this absolutely irrational, it's dumb? Now, if it's totally irrational, and there's absolutely nothing that I can do about it, and it does not make any sense, then I can perhaps ponder and say why I think it's stupid to even consider this. And I can deliberately then decide to ignore it. And the chances are about 90% that once we've identified the problem and the thinking and the worry, that it will disappear. Now, I've got more serious advanced processes that we can follow in terms of, let's call it the power morphing, where there's a serious resistor. But this is irrational fear. In other words, it's not something that we should even think about, but we do think about it. So if it's dumb, And then the next question then is, but do I have control over this? Or is there a way that I can control it? If I cannot control that, I can't control the South African economy to a certain extent. So I can ignore it, but there's a better way. If I can't ignore it, and there's a certain amount of control that I've got no control over the government and what they do, but I do have control over my economy. And then there's only two things that I can do. The first one is to say, okay, what can I do to prevent that my portion, my economy is going to go down? And how can I prepare if that should happen? So that is the process. First of all, identify it, then decide if it's dumb. If it's really dumb, you ignore it. If you can't control it, you ignore it. But if you can control it, then we have to put measures in place where we can prevent or prepare for that event. So if it's a legitimate fear, to what degree can I control this and take control of the situation? And then immediately start making a list, two lists. What action steps that I can take to prevent this thing from happening? And then also to develop a plan of action if that event will happen. And I'm going to give you a practical example quickly. One of the fears that I had when I started with Facebook, because right in the beginning of Facebook, now I didn't understand the way that Facebook operates. Okay, and I would make a comment, and then sometimes, not always, but sometimes there's a negative comment, and normally, right, I do something or I say something to the market, and then immediately someone will take the negative, and then it's almost like they spread that to their friends, and suddenly all this negativity starts jumping on this feed, and that to me simply I've never experienced that at that stage, something like this, and that something like this could happen. I thought that these were supposed to be my friends, and suddenly they like almost like attacking you. Okay, so immediately I had to figure out, but what am I going to do if someone really says bad things about me? Okay, and on the preventive side, the one thing that I do have control is if that person is my client. So if that person is my client, I've set up a system whereby I can immediately see, but is this person a Facebook friend? Or is this person not a Facebook friend? Because anyone can jump onto the bandwagon. Or is this person really a client? So the person that, if it's a client, a customer, or a student, I'm going to treat immediately different than the rest. So to me, my Facebook friends does not worry me. My business is to help my students. So if it's a student that has got a problem, I need to have processes, and I'm using a system. And because I've got the system, every single thing is documented. In other words, I can see when a person came onto my database. I can see where they came from. I can see what pages they looked at, how many pages they looked. I can see how long they've been on a page. I can see what courses they ordered. I can see the free courses as well as the paid courses. I can see on the university, I can see when they've done a course, how long they've spent on the course, what was the outcome on the course. So literally every single thing is documented. And then when someone phones the office, my office has got the instruction to immediately document that. So we can see who has queried what query, and if there's a legitimate query, they're going to handle it. And if it's not possible for them to handle it, they're going to put it through to me so that I can handle it. So this is all on the preventive side. And then also what I like to do on my database is I like to, let's call it, surprise them and give them more value than what they've bargained for, especially if they're on certain courses. Now, you'll always find that there are, I can almost say, not always, but a lot of times there's what we call problem children. It's people, they are students or they are clients, but they need more attention than the rest of, let's call it your students. They literally are more demanding. And nothing wrong with that, especially if you can help them. But you need to identify them and then make sure that my office knows these people, and literally when those people phone in or there's an email, they give special attention so they go beyond what they're supposed to do in cases like that. And that is literally like problem children. You need to give them more attention. It's not that they want to be problem children. They just are problem children. And you can help them so that they become normal, if I can put it to you that way. So that's one way. Another way to do is to prepare. In other words, how can I prepare? One way of preparing is to do more than what people expect. In other words, to really give and add value to not only to my clients and students, but also to the market in general, right? And the second thing that we can do is I've set up the system to deliberately ignore those people. So if a person comes in through email, my Lilo or Netta is going to look at it and they know that they're going to delete it. So I don't want to see that. I'm going to ignore it completely. Also on my Facebook, Vincent is managing my Facebook. So 99% of the time when someone says something bad, he's got a procedure that he's going to follow. So I don't see it. I will not even know it. And he will answer most of that on my behalf. If it's a special case, you will refer it back to me so that we can decide. But that happens very, very seldom, right? And then also make sure, in our case, we document everything in the event of something, if something turns haywire against us. And then, of course, I'm very lucky, and this is part of my process. Tanya was in the legal, let's call it industry, for a very, very long time. So she's got a really great network of superb advocates and attorneys that she can really, if she don't know how to handle it, she can call on them, and they are there to help us in the event of that. It only happened once in my life, and that was with property school about 12 years ago, 13 years ago, and where someone made certain acquisitions, and eventually we had to really buckle any back, because people are weird sometimes. It's weird, but some people are weird. So what's the net effect of this? Just by documenting and going through this process, I think that we can literally turn off these fear loops by understanding and recognize that these are ridiculous, that there's no validity in terms of to give them space in our mind in order for those little fear loops to continue. Now, if there is a problem or a possible fear that can become a reality or a worry, then we take prevention and we prepare for that. Even if it's not going to happen, we still have got places and processes in place for that if that maybe happens, okay? And that reduces the stress from me as well as from the office. And just by doing this, I think that it's a fabulous way to lower our stress levels, to lower our, let's call it overwhelm, to lower the anxiety that we've got and stuff like that. So I thought that I'd like to share this with you. I'm not sure if you can use it, but I see so much stress that it is unreal. So for that, thanks for your time. I see there's a couple of people here